Welcome to Minority Matters. I'm your host, Sylvester Smith. Much has been written and said about the relationship between minorities and the law enforcement community. Because of recent incidents, issues like the use of excessive force, cultural training, body cameras, and language barriers have been receiving more attention. During this program, we're going to discuss interactions between minority communities and law enforcement and what society can do to create more positive relationships. Joining me for this important discussion are Sergeant Willie Davis with the Little Rock Police Department and coordinator of the OK program, Officer Tommy Norman with the North Little Rock Police Department, Al Lopez, co-founder of One Community, and Reverend Benny Johnson, the founder of Stop the Violence. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today for this very important conversation about race, community, law enforcement, and really just how we pull this all together so that we can have communities of peace. So I'll just throw it out to you. We've all seen the news footage about Ferguson, the events in New York City, Baltimore, and other places. So what are your thoughts about what's going on and what society needs to do to fix it? I'll just throw it out there.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us, man. This is always a pleasure for me to get the opportunity to speak, regarding issues of certainly concern of mine, being a police officer 25 years and actually living in the city, in the neighborhood where I work and patrol all my career. So I think this is an important conversation to have and to dialogue about, actually, man. And I think it's long overdue, but most importantly, it's about relationships. Us having to know one another, getting to know the people that in the communities where we patrol on a one-on-one basis. I think that's important because the relationship between the community, particularly the black community, and the police has been adversarial for years. And so I think we've been long overdue in terms of trying to fix that. And I think with that, there's some work we have to do as police officers and the community as well.
Benny, you represent the community, and you've been a leading community voice in Little Rock, representing Little Rock's African-American community for years. Based upon what Sergeant Davis said, the community has a role that it has to play. What is that role, and is the community doing its part?
Well, the community got to get more involved. Never seen it that nobody want to get involved. We had this no snitching policy that's going on in the community, and when you sit up and let people infiltrate your community with drugs and other violence and other kind of illicit acts, you're just making that community worse. So our community definitely going to get back involved, and we got to put the neighbor back in the hood. We always talk about the hood. Let's put the neighbor back in the hood and get to know our neighbors. We have neighbors living right next door to you. You don't even know who they are. You don't even speak to each other. And you need to join in a collaborative effort with the community, with the city, the police, and faith-based organizations definitely need to be involved. Our churches got to get involved.
Al, you represent the Latino community in Arkansas, which is really seeing significant growth. And as your community is starting to grow and expand, are you seeing some of these same issues?
Sure, and I like to clarify in the way that, I feel I represent the whole community because, like we say, we're one community. So that's part of the whole process as you see communities that start to grow, maybe, Northwest Arkansas, maybe 20 years with Latino community, Marshallese now 10, 12 years. It's just being proactive and start to, educate people, let them know, but on both sides, because people, for example, don't understand that Latinos, especially, if you're from Mexico or Central America, you're afraid of the police. You don't trust the police. So that cultural aspect needs to be learned by the police, which they're doing a great job in doing and understanding, so that way they know where people are coming from when it's time to interact, and maybe they see a reaction that the police officer says, why is he not looking me in the eyes, or why, So it's just a matter of educating and letting people kind of understand the expectations and then making them to be part of solving crime. So if you have things in Spanish and you have hotlines that people can call and you know newspaper articles, I mean, just make the community moving in. That's part of the solution, because they are there precisely because they want a community free of crime, which is the common ground that unites us all. So,
yeah. Let me ask you this, Benny, because Al brought up a very interesting point. He said many Hispanics who are immigrants don't trust the police, maybe because of experience that they had in their home countries. But there are many African Americans who now argue that African Americans shouldn't trust the police. What are your thoughts on that? Is that true?
I think it's just an excuse, not to be involved. I know with the Hispanic community now, we work with the Hispanic community. We got together with the Mexican consulate. We had 2 homicides out in Southwest Little Rock, and a lot of times, when they're illegal here, they think the police are immigration. They're gonna take them back. We were able to get with the Mexican consulate's office and both of them homicides and do a press conference with Lieutenant Terry Hastings, when he's the commander of the Southwest Precinct, and within 24 hours, both of those homicides were solved.
Wow. Well, I think that's a fine example of what cooperation can lead to.
Yes, sir.
And cooperation is a two-way street. Officer Norman, I would say that you are a fine representation of how it can be done right. An interesting point about Officer Norman, I hail from North Little Rock, where he's an officer, and I've heard so many African Americans speak positively about him and his work that I thought he was a black man. Right. I mean, I seriously did. I thought Tommy Norman was a black guy until I learned otherwise. But talk to us about what law enforcement can do to do its part and do it right.
Police officers have a huge responsibility to go out and make a difference in the community. And as I said before, it goes beyond the badge, it goes beyond the gun, it goes beyond the uniform, it goes beyond the patrol car. That's only a fraction of what it takes to go out and make a difference. You've got to get off the main streets, you've got to get into the neighborhoods, but not just that, you also have to park your police car. You've got to walk, sit on some front porches, and get to know people's stories. It goes beyond writing tickets and making arrests. If you take the proactive stance in the community, then you're going to make less arrests because you're going to form the friendship. You've got to be a friend with members of the community, and it starts with the kids. There's a lot of kids in the patrol area that I work, and every day, if you turn down a street corner, there's going to be kids out there waiting on you to show up. And you make that trip every day, and they're on the front porches, and they're literally waiting for that police officer. So, you do that day in and day out, and you build a rapport. It takes consistency, and it also has to come from the heart. Right. And you put all those together, and it makes a big difference in bridging the gap between the community and the police department.
Now, one of the things that Officer Norman talked about, Officer Davis, was building a rapport and making connections. The OK program that you run, isn't that all about making connections between the officers and the community? Talk to us a little bit about that work.
Yes, most definitely. It was designed to actually address the high incarceration rates and homicides among black males, but it includes components with the business community, the schools, the teachers, the administrators, the faith-based, and so to incorporate all these individuals and to recruit responsible men to come in and help mentor these young guys. And so those relationships that he talked about are important. And it's interesting that you said you thought that he was a black officer, and to the point that we assume that if they're black kids, there's a black officer because the way the black kids talk about him. Well, we need officers like Tommy Norman to do what he's doing because of what's going on in the community now. And not because bad things are happening, because that's what we should do. And what he's doing, that's a calling. You can't teach what he's doing in the academy. That's hard. It's hard work, but it's hard work. And that's what he's doing. And so it's important to develop and cultivate these relationships and mindsets because they won't forget who he is. They don't think about what Khalil, they don't care, but they know he loves them. And that's the most important thing you can offer any kid. The most important component of a child's life is a caring adult. They don't care what color they are. And that's what's important.
Well, gentlemen, Benny, one of the things that I've heard discussed here is just the importance of fostering that relationship. Let's talk a little bit about when these things go bad, because we've seen these incidences. The Michael Brown situation in Ferguson. There was an officer-involved shooting, and many of the people in the community felt that it wasn't an appropriate time to take that type of action, and there were all these protests. The same thing in Baltimore, and we could go on just listing these incidences. What can the African-American community do to make sure that our young people aren't involved in these instances, first of all, and then second of all, when there is such a shooting, that we don't have that type of violent reaction?
Right. First of all, parents got to teach their children how to react to the police. They're gonna start at home. not only respect yourself, but you got to respect others. I'm glad you brought it up about the other. Now, the shooting, the police shot the guy in the back, that's purely murder. You talk Ferguson, we talk about Baltimore. Now, you look at Baltimore, how they rioted through the city. And previously, I think about 2 weeks before that, a 14-year-old boy got shot in the head. He's a little baby, and nobody said anything. You talking about Ferguson, Missouri. Reverend Benny, you going up to Ferguson? I said, go to Ferguson what? We got our problems in our own backyard. We got to take care of that first. We got a high rate, and we just got to make it plain and simple. People get mad at us. I say that we got a high rate of black-on-black homicides. In it, year in, year out. Anywhere, Little Rock, North Little Rock, I guarantee you 85% of those homicides are black-on-black. And that's where we're going to have to start. We're going to tell them people we got to love and start respecting each other. And when you love and respect each other, you can put a dent in a lot of this going on. But we got to take care of home first. You know, just like Chicago, Illinois, one weekend had 100-some shootings, so many people killed. But I saw people going from Chicago to Ferguson, Missouri, and you got all your own problems in your backyard. So you got to take care of home first.
I think that's a fabulous point. And I appreciate you for being a voice that takes that side of the issue. Because when you see one of these officer-involved shootings, you see all these T-shirts and signs and social media posting saying Black Lives Matter.
Right.
But do those lives matter any less when there's another black person taking that life?
They just say white officer, you know, against a black man. But, you know, those officers not always wrong.
Well, that's certainly an interesting statement to make. Now, when you're dealing with these kids, you know, do you give them any guidance or approaches or tools that they can use when they're interacting with law enforcement?
I think one of the most important things, and he said it, is self-respect. And I have a hard time believing that if a young man, we're teaching these young guys this to respect and love themselves. If they do that, they will have a hard time disrespecting you. And so I don't buy into sitting my son down in a chair and saying, Joshua, this is what you do when you stop by the police. No. I'm going to start when Joshua's 2 or 3 years old, when he understands the value in self-respect and love. So he's going to learn how to respect the next door neighbor's dad, the grocery store owner, the pastor, and anybody grown person he comes in contact with. So it's not about simply because these shootings are occurring and police officers on the other end of it, now I got to talk to him about this. No, it's too late. So, and I don't want him to have this attitude where all cops are bad. We got some great cops. In fact, they're more good than our bad ones.
That's right.
And I'll back it up any day, but we still have some things we have to do at home in our own homes because it starts with the family. The family is the first agency of socialization. We get our names, we get our heritage, we get our identity, and then we also get those things where if mama and dad don't like the police or Uncle Jesse got locked up by the police, they'll form those opinions because they hear us talk about those things. Not that the police has done anything to those young people. And so we got to deal with those things. And there's some other areas that I'm concerned about, the mass media, our schools, and peer pressure. So until we can address all those things as a community, as a nation actually, to actually talk about, have some hard conversations about race in our communities, and we won't fix it. And stuff like this has to happen, but once we leave here, we'll do some work. Yeah, this is not microwave stuff, this is oven cooking, so take a little longer.
What about you, Al, in the Latino community? Are there efforts to educate Latino youth on what to do when they have interactions with law enforcement?
Yeah, like in our area or anywhere that you have an influx of a new community moving in, you know, those children learn the language. A lot of Latino kids have been born here already, so what we find a lot is the communication between parents and children start getting difficult. You know, the child maybe uses it to his advantage, not understanding. Well, you know, I'll just say I don't speak Spanish. You know, to my parent, I don't understand what you're saying. I say, yeah, well, Then when you understand, then you eat, right? No. Cuando entiendas, come. Pero that's one of the things that we've noticed, that as a community, then we have to take it upon ourselves, you know, in an organized way, through the schools, through the churches, through the police department, but take it upon ourselves to bring these kids on board, but also use the Spanish media to educate parents and teach them, you know, the expectations, but also how they can, I mean, parents, many of my parents, when we had the incident of the shootings down there, and I showed them what their kids were posting on Facebook, they couldn't believe it. The first thing was, can you teach us Facebook? Wow. You see, so these are things that we have to think about, and we say, yes, we can. So the school, we started a program to teach parents about technology so they can get involved. But, you know, that's a kind of something that happens when you have a different language come into a community, that you'll see that tendency of kids. You have to kind of watch them a little bit closer and be with them, spend more time in order to get them on board and make sure that their parents are also connected with their children that way. So it's an extra challenge.
And that time is important, man. Yes. What you're talking about, man, I mean, you're talking about mentoring and doing what Tommy does, what I do. I mean, he can't see them today and see them next week. This is an everyday thing. And they expect that. I mean, we become fathers, not intentionally, that they never had. And so you giving them hugs and love, and you're talking about a black male that never been told he loved before. They don't understand that. But they buy into it because they know it's from here. And so that's what we have to do. And it's an ongoing thing. It's not no half-done job. You have to consistently be involved in these guys' lives.
Well, Officer Norman, I mean, Officer Davis just kind of talked about some of the work you do, and you talked earlier about making connections. I mean, as an officer, if there's some rookie cop watching this program, what advice would you give him about going down the path to start to build those connections and make and have interactions with these young people?
Well, I would tell that officer that he has to lead with his heart. To me, the heart is more powerful than the badge. And Sergeant Davis mentions being a friend to the kids. But what's more powerful than the uniform is when a kid sees you in a T-shirt and a pair of blue jeans at their birthday party. Come see them at the hospital. Come see them graduate. And when they see you out of the uniform, they see that you're a real person, you're a regular person. I mean, that's powerful.
Yes, it is.
You know, my business cards have my cell phone number on there. Those kids, their parents, they give my cell phone number, because if you're going to be ingrained in that community, and you're going to invest your heart and your time into it, they've got to be, you become part of their family. You become part of their family. And so you have to serve as a family member. We're in this occupation, we wear this uniform, just so happen that's what we do, right? But it's not the uniform, it's not the badge, it's not any of that. It's the heart, and it's the time, and it's the passion you put into it.
That's the best. Both of them talk about the heart. And I ain't come here to preach, but the Bible says, well, coming from the heart reaches the heart. And kids know when you're right and when you're serious and when you're not.
And for new officers, some of them are a little reluctant to go into the neighborhoods. Maybe the community sees a new face in that police car. Maybe they may shy away, but you can't give up. You got to keep going, keep going, and keep going until you reach that level of rapport that can't be broken.
You know, that brings up an interesting thought in my mind. I was reading recently about the Little Rock Police Department, and Officer Davis, if you're not comfortable commenting on this, Officer Norman may or may not want to get into it, but I'm just going to throw it out here. But there was an article about the shifts that the chief made, moving some of the community-oriented policing officers over to patrol. And I think community-oriented policing is a fabulous concept. But would it not be a better investment, instead of having 4 officers that are dedicated to working in their communities, take those dollars and spread them across the entire department and say to the officers, you got 3 hours a month where you do community-oriented policing, where you put on your T-shirt and your jeans, and you go here, you go there. And you just give the chief a report of what you did. I mean, would that not be a valuable investment at that time, just so people can see the officers, everyday officers working in their communities, actually interacting in their communities?
Absolutely. That should be not just 3 hours a week. That should be their assignment. And what happened was he didn't take them out of community police and put in patrol. He removed them from one location to another one to address an issue. I think it was the river market. Yeah. And people didn't too much care about that. But community policing is a concept in that everybody don't embrace it. But when you get that officer that knows how it works and what it's supposed to do, you got a gem, because you become the people's police. I did it for about 5 or 6 years, loved it. and build a lot of relationships doing that thing, because you're on a bicycle, you can turn around in the middle of the street, you can walk on porches, you can have coffee, and you become their police. And that's the whole design of it, because you help me solve issues of crime and fear of crime. So, and it's here to stay. And then you'll know when a city or department has bought into community policing when you see the word written on the cars. It says community policing on the cars, and a lot of chiefs are reluctant to do that, you know. But I think you'll see some across the country, but I think you're moving in that direction when the big chief says, this is what we're going to do, and this is going to work through our department. Yeah, and you pick the ones that want to do this, because you can't force someone to do it because you mess it up. But if you get a guy that got the heart to do it and want to be out there with the people, you got a gem. Yeah.
Al, Benny, any thoughts on community-oriented policing?
Well, I want to just touch on, if you're going to move someone, move them where the violent crimes that are going on. And I think those officers were ruled down to the river market, if I'm not mistaken. And you got the powers to be there. You had a shooting in the river market, and I was very displeased where a guy came shot up in the air. Mm-hmm. And we had been a regular occurrence in the inner city. At that time, we had so many homicides. You send 50-plus officers, almost 60 officers, some uniform, ununiformed, civilian clothes, over one shooting where you hear them in the inner city every day. It don't take no genius to figure out where those people need to be and the officers need to be. I got a problem when you have a police chief to pay favoritism. I have a serious problem with that because, you know, these lives matter. I don't care what color you are. And like I said, the majority of homicide are black on black crime. I'm concerned about all the homicide, but be fair. Don't treat just the river market just because the powers that be there. Don't do that. Treat every part of the city the same.
Well, I think that's a great point to make as we go into this next phase. We've got about 5 minutes left in the show. I'd like to talk about what the community and the police can do to really address this problem. And I think that's a great lead-in, treat everybody the same. Al, what are your thoughts?
Well, for example, what I mentioned before is educating parents, but not so only educating, but then asking their opinion. And I'm talking again about Latinos. And when I say I work for everybody, it's because we know if we speed up this process with Latinos, this helps the community as one. But basically, we have parents now on Spanish radio doing commercials about bullying and doing commercials about, you know, trusting the police and doing commercials about drugs. I mean, cyber bullying. So it's involving them, not only talking to them, but now how can you teach others? How can we use you in order to become a spokesperson and keep spreading the word out there? So I think that's one of the important aspects that we've been dealing with right now, and just involving the parents and letting them see that it is possible to be part of the system, even if you don't speak the language. Until you learn that language, you can be part of the solution.
Officer Norman?
I just want to share that, in North Little Rock, I work in the inner city of North Little Rock, downtown North Little Rock, Pike Avenue. And one of the traditions I have every summer is to keep an ice chest in the trunk of my patrol car and pass out cold drinks to kids. I had a parent tell me that first Coke that I gave to her son, that after he drank it, he kept that can of Coke on his nightstand for several weeks. So it doesn't matter what's coming from the hands of a police officer. It doesn't matter what you hand that child. It's like a pot of gold to them. So that's just another example of community policing and what you could do. A 2-minute visit, the power of 2 minutes. And Benny and I talk about that a lot. But if you only have 2 minutes to visit with them, then that 2-minute visit will have an impact that will last a lifetime. So it's powerful to talk about. It really is.
Officer Davis?
I think ongoing training on the parts, particularly in the police departments, cultural diversity training, sensitivity training, things like that, and bringing the right people in that can have those discussions and talk about those things. From a community perspective, I think we can engage our youth and talk to these young kids more about things. You can go into those elementary schools. If you're in community policing, stop out and talk to them out on the porch. Connect the businesses and the churches that are involved in those inner cities to have meetings and things like that, to invite the police out to neighborhood fests and things like that, that everybody can be in harmony and discuss and have fun. And they can see, like Thomas said, that we are people too. We have family, we have kids that are knuckleheads, you know, and so if you cut me, I'll bleed. And so those kind of things need to continue to take place.
Well, it seems to me, and I don't give my opinion a lot, but it seems to me that we have a self-perpetuating cycle of that creates a mutual environment of fear, both among law enforcement and then people in the minority communities. Law enforcement see minorities commit violent acts upon each other, and they think that when I pull up behind a car and there's two minorities in there, I have to be extra cautious because they're minorities. And I think that when you have these officer-involved shootings, that in some part may stem from that fear, then the minority communities become more fearful of officers. And again, that just kind of feeds into the cycle. So I feel like this has been a fabulous discussion, not just about the problem, but about things that society, governments, and us as individuals can do to break that cycle and end this violence in our communities. And I just thank each and every one of you gentlemen for your time, for coming and sharing your time with us today. It's a big commitment. I appreciate you for your openness and your candor about this very, very critical issue. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We appreciate you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Great.